Stream has started.
Yeah, with your mom.
Gentlemen, hush. So, stream has started. We're going to get started here. So, yeah, last day we worked on this. We made basically the face of the cat. We're not completely done with the head and the face, but what did we do here? Well, we made a sketch that was like this. Okay? We made a sketch like this. We used constraints like, for example, the equal constraint to make the various parts of the ear the same size. We use constraints like the horizontal constraint to line up these vertices, these crevices, so that the ears would line oriented the same way on each side. So that was a way to get them to be the same. Yeah. Once we made that sketch, we then extruded it. Most common feature is an extrusion. And it just takes a sketch and gives it some height or depth. Then I sketched on top of that extrusion, I sketched one eye. We used the trim tool because I actually used two circles to get this kind of football-shaped thing. I trimmed the rest of it. And then I only made one. I used the mirror tool to copy it. So there's multiple ways to get things that look the same. And when I extruded this, I actually did a subtractive extrusion. You notice right here I have the remove tab selected as opposed to the add tab. So it cut into the material. So I got my eyes. Okay.
Can I go to the vending machine real quick?
No comment. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some whiskers to the cat. Sound good? Yeah? Yeah, get some whiskers going.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Sure.
Thanks.
Have fun. Don't die.
I'll be right back.
So I'm going to sketch onto my cat's face. I'm going to sketch. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to draw a circle. You're going to see why I do this. I'm going to draw a circle, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle like this on the circle. Okay. Now, let me explain to you a few specific nuances here when I did this. You may recall when I was doing some things yesterday, I talked about how, when my starting circle started on the origin, it allowed me to use the planes and the origin that already existed as lines of symmetry, which is really convenient, okay? So sometimes you have to create those lines of symmetry, but if they're already there, you should try and use them. And in this case, if I want to have something centered, if you look very carefully, you can see, you might not be able to see it up there, but you can see it on your screen. Because I have my cursor, I got the circle tool selected, and it's because of my cursor pretty much on that line. It's assuming I want to be on that line. And so it's got like dashed orange things here. It's got a vertical constraint. That vertical constraint is telling me that it's trying to automatically line up the center of my circle with something else. So I'm going to draw a circle down here. Okay? About that size. And notice that the center, is lined up vertically with the origin.
How the heck did you start on the thing?
Now, I'm not going to make these things too complicated. I'm going to just do a single rectangle to represent a single whisker. Okay? And if you go here to the rectangle tool, we see that? Yes, yeah? Okay. The default choice draws a rectangle like this, corner to corner. And that's really useful a lot of times. But sometimes you want to have the center of the rectangle locked into a certain spot. I would like to have the center of my rectangle tied to the center of the circle. And a lot of these tools have drop-down arrows. So if you look, next to the rectangle is an arrow. And if I click that, you can see that there's actually 3 different ways that you can draw a rectangle. One of which is this center point rectangle. So the corner rectangle, you click, that plops a corner. The next click plops the second corner. The center point rectangle, the first click plops the center. If I know where I want the 2 corners, well, corner rectangle is probably the best strat. But if I don't necessarily know where I want the 2 corners, or I do, but it'd be easier because I know where the center is going to be to just do it that way. This corner rectangle isn't always the way to strat. Sometimes that center point rectangle is the way to go. Okay? So you should use tools with the drop-down arrow, the one for the rectangle, center point rectangle. I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to just draw a rectangle where the center of the rectangle is at the center of the circle. And I'm going to draw something that looks kind of like that. I'll make it kind of thin because they're whiskers. And I have a rectangle that's now centered on that circle. Do you have questions at this point? Questions on this point? We're good? All right. Well, we're going to make a single whisker, and then we're going to use a type of pattern to make the whisker have more than just one set. Okay? So, I'm going to hit the green check mark. We're good? Yeah? All right. It's hard to see probably for you on my screen, but you should be able to see on your screen. The sketch is this gray. I know the surface is blue and gray on blue is not the best, but it is there. If I hover over it, I can see the orange. We're going to click on extrude. What are we clicking on? Extrude. And I'm going to select my whisker. Now that circle did cut the rectangle into segments, so it did require 3 clicks. But I got my entire whisker selected. Are we good so far? Okay, what you can do now is you can grab that arrow and you can make it however thick you want. I don't really want this to be that thick. So I kind of took that arrow and kind of dragged it down, made it a little bit shorter. Okay. And then you can finish that extrusion. Do we have any questions? That's obviously not a very good job of doing whiskers, plural.
I think
I could individually draw a bunch, right? I could do that. And sometimes you have to do that.
Oh,
But if you can use a pattern to do a bunch of stuff automatically, well, hey, that's a winning strat, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to, after you extrude it, we're going to use the circular pattern feature. So right here, kind of in the middle, there's like 4 tiny boxes, where like one of them is like white, and the other 3 are gray. You hover over it, it says a linear pattern. Do we see that? Yes, yeah. Do we see it?
Yeah.
We're good, maybe? Well, if you click the drop-down arrow, there is a circular pattern option. We see this, correct? Yes, we're good?
yeah.
So I choose circular pattern. Okay. So it says part to pattern. Okay. Pro tip here.
Mine's 40,000.
This is very important. This is an oddity of Onshape. Whenever you do something, in this case, I'm patterning something, I have to tell it what to pattern, right? By default, it's expecting me to choose parts. This entire thing is a part. I don't want to pattern this entire thing. I want to pattern a feature. So right here, near the top where it says part pattern, you need to click and change that to feature pattern. What are we changing it to?
Feature pattern.
If you do not change it to feature pattern, you're not going to be able to click on anything that you want to click on. Okay? This is going to be a reoccurring thing. Whenever you have to choose a feature, usually by default, it defaults to part selection, which is very rarely what you actually want. So you're going to need to choose that drop-down option of feature pattern. Are we good so far? Questions? Says right here, features the pattern, and it's blue. That means that it's expecting whatever I click on is going to get added to the features the pattern. Now you can choose features one of two ways. You can click on them over here where they actually physically are, or you can click on them over here. You can select them from this, for lack of a better term, table of contents. It's like a library of all the things you've done or made. I'm just going to click on it over here. Be careful. Don't click on like an edge. You don't want to pattern just an edge. You want to pattern the whole thing. So click in the middle of a side so that you actually select the whole thing. Now, I could choose more things. I'm not going to, but I could. You can add multiple things to that selection. But now we need to choose an axis of pattern. It's boxed red right now because you literally cannot do this if you don't have an axis of pattern. So it's red because it's going to throw an error and not work if you don't, in fact, take care of it immediately. To be clear, this is separate from the thing we're patterning. So axis of pattern, I'm going to click on that. Now it went from red to blue. Blue means that whatever I click on is adding to that selection. And I'm going to select that circle that I drew. Now, there is a slight problem. That circle is no longer visible. As a general rule, when you use a sketch, we call this consuming. When you consume a sketch, you'll notice if you look over here that all of the sketches are kind of grayed out. Do you see that? And when you first consume a sketch, it assumes that you don't want to see it anymore, which is not a terribly unreasonable assumption. And so it makes it hidden. It's still there, you cannot see it. In order to unhide something, if you hover over it, you'll notice, for example, that there's this eyeball right here. You see that eyeball? And if you click on that eyeball, right now it has a slash through it, but I click on the eyeball, and now it's visible. I mean, it's hard to see, but it's definitely there. There's definitely a gray circle. We see it? Yes or yeah?
Yeah.
So this is a general truth. Anything over here, you can review or hide by clicking on the eyeball. Some extrusions are not going to have one. And the reason why is very simple. If I extrude something and then I put a bunch of intricate sketches on it, it's not obvious, like, how am I going to put those sketches on an extrusion that doesn't exist then? It doesn't work that way. So it won't let you hide everything. But sketches can always be hidden. I'm going to cover near sketch 3, and I'm going to click on the eyeball to make it visible. Okay? Which I already did, but just reminding you. Click on the eyeball and make it visible. And now, for my axis of pattern, I can click on the circle. And you can see that it's already starting to pattern it. Do we have any questions?
No.
Now, there's a lot that you can do here. I'm not going to get caught up in specific numbers. But what I would like to do is I would like to have 3 whiskers on each side. Think of whiskers kind of like this. Make sense? Yes or yeah?
Yeah.
So I have basically the 2 middle ones. So I got to get 2 at the top angled that way and 2 in the bottom angled this way. You can finesse this to do that. The first thing I want to do is I want to check centered. What am I checking? If you're wondering what centered does, centered means that the initial one's in the middle and then it puts them both ways. The instance count. You can try different numbers.
So funny.
You can kind of see what it does. So like this is 5, for example. If you didn't center it, oh no,
Do you have super glue?
I do.
Can I use it?
There's some very cheap, sketchy bottles of it on this table.
Oh, fire.
Oh yeah. And there might be some more. No, there's not actually. That's all I have, I think. I need to buy some more. You okay, baby? Are you trying to glue? Oh, good luck with that.
I think it's gonna work.
Oh, it'll hold.
What?
Just don't glue your fingers together.
I don't want to be.
If I turn centered off, it becomes a little bit more obvious what that number means. I clearly have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, of
Thank you.
course. You can also change the angle. So for example, I really don't want them to go around a whole circle. All right. I want them to go like maybe like that. So I put in 20 degrees and I put an instance count of 2. So what does that mean? Well, the 20 degrees is how far apart the starting point is to the last one that's made. Okay? And then the instance count is how many it makes. So like if I did 90 degrees, all right, and I'm going to do this as an example. If I do 90 degrees, all right, that means that's going to start at 0 and it'll go up to 90 degrees. And then the number I put here is like how many it fits in between 0 and 90 degrees. Okay, so it's got 3, 1, 2, 3 in between 0 and 90 degrees. Okay, so the angle is not how far apart two adjacent ones are. It's just the total range that you are circular patterning these. And the instance count, you know, this is right here, this equal spacing. If you have that checked, it just equally spaces them to fill 0 to 90 degrees with that many. So if I make the angle, like I said, I made it originally 20 degrees, you can see as I add more, it's not expanding. It's just adding more and cramming more into that narrow range of 20 degrees. So this is, with the centered thing, it's going to run from negative 20 to 20 degrees. And if I put like 3, for example, so here's 1, the initial, it's going to have 3 each way. So we got 2, 3 that way, 2, 3 that way. So if you put 2, I know this sounds counterintuitive, but 2 actually gives you 3 because you have the initial one, and then there's 2 going up, including the initial, 2 going down, including the initial. So you basically have added 2 extra. Do we have questions? And I'm done with my whiskers. So that saved me a hassle. I didn't have to draw rectangles and then click on all of them. I just did the circular pattern. You can do patterns within sketches, right? Okay, we talked about this. So you can mirror within a sketch, or you can make features and then mirror features. I mean, right here is the mirror button. You can mirror features. You can do patterns with features, but you can also do patterns in a sketch. In my opinion, I find that sketching features is better than sketching mirroring sketches when you're trying to mirror multiple features simultaneously. I find that mirroring sketches is better when it's just like going to be one feature, like one extrusion. I find that when it comes to patterns, generally speaking, it's easier if you pattern features, but there are sometimes exceptions. Okay, we're going to do like a mouth or nose, or I guess it'd be like a muzzle, or I don't really know what you call this part of cats. Or mouse or whatever. So, to do that, we're going to do not an extrusion. We're going to do something else. So, what I would like for you to do, over here, do we see sketch 3? Yeah, we see it? Yes, yeah. We're going to hide that. We don't need to see that no more. So I went over to sketch 3, I clicked the eyeball, it's hidden now. I don't need to see it no more. Huh?
I
If you hover over it, you should have an eyeball. All right. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new sketch on the face again. What am I making a sketch on? Face. Extrusions are really good when you have a shape that just gets extruded and doesn't change its shape as you go along. But for stuff that's rounded, think like a sphere. How would you make a sphere of an extrusion? You would not, right? You could make a cylinder. I could draw a circle and then extrude it. I could make a cylinder. I couldn't make a sphere of an extrusion. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a feature called revolve. Okay? So what I'm going to draw is I'm going to draw the shape that I want to revolve, and then I have to have an axis that I'm going to do the revolve around. Okay? So I'm going to go right here. All right? And I'm sketching on this surface. I am going to draw a circle. Again, like that. And I'm going to draw another circle. Notice that each of the circles, they're like a little bit off to the side. So I've kind of almost like a Venn diagram. I've done this before. How would I make the circles the same size? Yeah. So recall, we have constraints, right? Yeah. So I can click equal. Click circle 1. Click circle 2. They're not the same size. If you don't like the size of them, you can change them. And changing them is only going to require one, like, because they're lined up, I only have to change one, okay? So like I can grab this circle, and if I make it, oh boy, if I make it bigger, the other one changes too. How would I line up their centers to be the same height? What constraint would we use? Yeah. So if I go back to constraints, we have horizontal. Yeah, right? And I can click on the center of the first, click on the center of the second, and now their centers are lined up. I would also like this to be centered about the face. So for example, if I do this, they're not symmetrical. And that's not acceptable. So how would I line them up so that they straddle the halfway point or the line equally? Well, there's different ways you can do this. But a way would be is if I could somehow make this crevice aligned with the origin, that would work out. Unfortunately, if I try to do a constraint, there's nothing there for me to click. I'm hovering my mouse there. It doesn't recognize that as a point. You can, however, add points arbitrarily. So there's a point tool. It's a tiny circle. What is it? Tiny circle. So I click on it, and I can place one right there. I know I'm placing on both circles because what color are both circles? They're both orange, so I know I'm hovering over both. And I can click and I can place my point there. And now you see a tiny white dot. I can now do stuff to that tiny white dot. And the biggest thing that I can do in this context that would be helpful is I can go to constraints and do a vertical constraint. What type of constraint? Oh Lord, none of you were saying anything. It's like Blake, and that's it. It's so sad. So you do a vertical constraint,
We already did this though.
and I can line up this little dot with the center. And now, whatever this is like symmetrical about the I guess that'd be the Z, yeah, Z axis.
Can I do what? Go along with it.
You may or may not really understand what shape and size exactly you want this to be. So let me just say that let's make it first, and you can change the shape and size later. To do a revolve, you have to have what you're going to revolve, but you also have to have what you're going to revolve it around. I need to revolve it around a line. So I'm going to take the line tool, which is right here, and I'm going to draw a line in the middle. I refer to them as snap twos, and we're using a snap two constraint to help this line go from here to here. So,
How can you? I don't know the name. I try to like base type this one.
try to do what?
Like I want to see all of this country. I don't know what they mean. They sound simple, but I don't know what they mean.
This is why we don't do drugs. This is what happens, okay? I think your Chromebook did drugs. You should tell it to not do this.
System was well, you pick one country to do. People will all take multiple, but I'm gonna take away too long. I'm just actually going to be more.
Oh, you zoomed in, like in the browser. You're using a mouse, right? I'm guessing maybe, did you hold like control? If you zoomed in, like while you were hovering over like a bar or something? I'm not sure.
I don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, because if I hover over this bar, see how it changes the percentage? Whereas if I hover over here, it just zooms in. Better?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to draw this line. Do we see the line that I drew? Yes or yeah? We have to have a line axis to do a revolve around. Now, here's something that's interesting. I don't really want that line to be a part of like the thing I'm revolving. It doesn't really necessarily matter that it goes exactly from this point to this point, but I'm going to do it just to be clean and professional. But I got my line. Are we good so far? Yes or yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to click the green check mark. And we're going to revolve. Oh boy. The sketch is there, by the way. It's hard to see, but it is there. The revolve feature, it's like the pac. Okay? Looks like a Pac-Man party foul. Looks like a Pac-Man. You can click on revolve. What does the blue box say? There we go. Faces and sketch regions to revolve. I have to choose the shape that I'm going to revolve. So I'm going to choose the parts of my sketch. Now we have a problem here. I'm not able to choose all of my sketch because this big old shape is in the way. How do I fix that? Well, that was circular pattern and extrude 3. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
You can right click on something like an extrusion, or a circular pattern, you can right click and you can choose suppress. So for sketches, we have the eyeballs, right? For features, you can't just make them invisible, but you can suppress them. And you can tell something is suppressed because there's a line drawn through it and the letters are like italicized or put at a slant. So now I can go back to revolve and you can clear this up and just have a blank faces and sketch regions revolve. And I don't have that stuff interfering with my stuff anymore. Okay. So I selected half of the shape. How much?
Half.
Half. Look what's orange and yellow. I selected just half of it. We good? Yes, yeah? If you're wondering how I was able to select that, the key here was I suppressed the extrusion and the circular pattern associated with the whiskers. We good? What does the red box say? So the revolve axis is prompting me to choose that. So I got to click on the red box. And then I'm going to hover over this line that I drew. That's why I had to draw the line. If I didn't have that line there, I wouldn't have anything to revolve around. And once you click on it, it'll do a preview. We good? Now, how many of you, when you did this, it's gray? Anybody have this issue? Nobody? Okay. I'm going to go back now, and I'm going to right-click on Extrude 3 and Circular Pattern 1, and I'm going to unsuppress those to bring them back. Ooh, that didn't quite work out the way I wanted. Oh well, that's character. So I got a little mouth action going. You can see the revolve. Didn't quite work out as I wanted, but that's okay. If you don't like that shape, you're welcome to try something else. Like maybe you want something that's just more of a basic circle. Or maybe you want something that's more angular or triangular or shape. You can do whatever you want. So for example, I can go back into this sketch and I can decide, I don't like this. I want something different. So what could I choose? Well, recall the circle tool, right? If you click on the arrow next to it, there is actually an ellipse. So maybe I want something more elliptical. You can do that. You can try out an ellipse. Still need to have a line drawn though that cuts it in half to revolve around. Then I can go back into my revolve. I can choose the thing I want to revolve. I can choose my revolve axis.
Oh, that's great. I think he must have
Skill issue. Do you have any questions about revolve? You can make some really complicated stuff with revolve that, like, to do with extrusions would be very difficult, if not outright impossible. Whenever you have radial symmetry, revolve's a really powerful tool. And you don't have to revolve a full 360 degrees. You can revolve just a part, just like the circular pattern. We just patterned it a part of a circle. You can revolve just parts of a circle.
Then we do the lengths.
Okay, we are done with the head. Before we go any further, though, look over on the left side. Look at our table of contents, so to speak. If I asked you go edit the eyes, would you know what to click on?
figure it out.
You might not know which one to click on, but you're saying you could figure it out. Yeah, you probably could. Let's imagine that you download a part from somebody, hypothetical, and there's 100 different features and sketches over there. How would you know which one to edit if you want to edit one thing? Would you know? So the thing here is if you don't intelligently name your stuffs, it can get very easy to get lost and confused later on. So we're going to require good habits in here. And I'll just point blank tell you, just so you're aware. When I grade your stuff, I'm not just looking at a picture of it. I'm going to actually have the file open. And if you don't construct things in a proper way or name your parts and sketches and features in an intelligent manner, you're not going to get full credit. You've been warned. So let's do a little history here. What does sketch 1 seem to be? Okay? You call it what you want. I'm going to call it head. So you right click on it and you choose edit. What do you choose?
Edit.
And you can click this little pencil button right here. So if I'm in the edit mode, if I hover near the green check mark, it's tricky because it's not there unless you hover. If you hover near the green check mark or the pencil, and you can edit the name. That's a way to change the name. In fact, that's a nice way to change the name while you're making a sketch the first time, right? But if you want to go rename the sketch you already made or the extrusion, you don't have to go to edit. You can just click on rename. Make sense? Yes, yeah. That was the head. The extrusion and the sketch, I had the same name. That's fine. They're both tied to the head. What did I do next? Do you remember? No, I didn't make it.
Eyes.
Okay, I made the football-shaped eyes. So sketch 2 and extrude 2. Eyes. Eyes. What was next? What? Yep. So sketch 3 and extrude 3. whiskers. And whiskers. The circular pattern, I want to call whiskers as well. It's okay to do that because I can see which one of those is a sketch. One of them is a sketch, one's an extrusion, and one's a pattern. So I know what they are. I just need to label them as, tied to the whiskers. And then the last one, you can call it the mouth, nuzzle, whatever you want to call it. All right. We're done with the head and face. So